In the days before smartphones, many of you may recall using a road atlas to get around, fumbling through the pages, mapping out your route, which certainly needed to happen before you were on your way, and often the success of your journey was hinged on having a helpful passenger remind you of the upcoming turn, your very own human GPS. I was 22 years old the first time I moved to a new city. So it was really the first time I had to think really hard about how to get around. I didn't know the streets, I didn't know the turns, I didn't know anything, the landmarks. Also, I had no smartphone. I had no GPS. What I had were printed turn-by-turn directions from MapQuest. I have a distinct and embarrassing memory from one of my first times driving home from my new job. I was an assistant educator at a small, medium-sized congregation in Northern Virginia, working with the youth group. But it was my first day coming home. I'd had a great day. I loved the community. I knew I was going to love it there. And I missed the turn to go home. I panicked. I frantically tried looking at my MapQuest printout, trying not to hit any other vehicles along the way. But obviously, my printout only had the information I needed if I followed the route. I was lost. Frantically, I called a friend and begged for help, hoping that they were at a computer with internet access, which was not a given in the year that this happened. Despite his best efforts, he could not orient me to my surroundings. And boy, did he try. Instead of thanking him profusely for interrupting his entire day to help me, I was short with him. I was angry. I expressed my frustration at his inability to change my situation from 1,000 miles away. This was far from the first and far from the last time I reacted to something inappropriately. But it's one of the ones I remember most because of how obvious it was that my reaction did not match the situation at all. Why did I do that? Why did I get so angry? To put it simply, I was scared. At that time in my life, I was carrying so much. Not only had I moved away from my hometown for the first time in my entire life, I was also starting a full-time job for the first time. And also, my father had died just 6 weeks before I moved to a completely new place, a place where I knew exactly one person. When I got lost that day, when I missed that turn, when I couldn't find my way back, suddenly the floodgates of all the anxiety and uncertainty and grief I had been carrying opened up. I'm not sure I even shared all of my worries, concerns, or fears with anyone else at the time. I had retreated into myself, into my grief. Because of holding it all in, I directed my anger at someone else, when the truth of it was, I was angry at the world. I do want to cut the suspense a little, and of course, I do want to let you know I did apologize to my friend, and we remained friends. But I hadn't thought about this moment from over 15 years ago for probably over a decade. But it came back to the surface when rereading this week's Torah portion, Korach. Korach, who is a first cousin of Miriam, Aaron, and Moses, challenges their leadership in the desert with the support of 250 chieftains. These are people that have the finest of reputations among the Israelites, the Torah tells us. So Korach and these 250 chieftains approach Moses and Aaron and declare, Rav lechem, you have gone too far. They remind Moses and Aaron, all of the community is holy. You think you're better than us, they say. Moses, in an attempt to remind Korach that it is God who decided who would lead the Israelites, not Moses. Moses challenges Korach to a sacrifice offering competition of sorts, to see whose sacrifice God will accept. Not surprisingly, not only is Korach's sacrifice not accepted, but he and his followers are swallowed by the earth, their lives extinguished. After witnessing this tragedy and another immediately following it, leading to the deaths of nearly 15,000 of their community, the remaining Israelites cry out to Moses, "Avadnu, kulanu avadnu." We are lost, all of us, we are lost. They couldn't hold it in anymore. All of the anxiety, all of the uncertainty came pouring out in those three words. Avadnu, kulanu avadnu. We are lost, all of us. We are lost. And for the first time, I had empathy for Korach. Korach, who we always look at as the example of someone too full of himself, seeking power for power's sake, not for the greater good. It was as if these words were what Korach meant to say to Moses. I am lost. We are lost. At least in Egypt, we imagine Korach saying, or should have said. At least in Egypt, I knew what to expect every day. Here in the wilderness, I thought we were going to get to the promised land. And when we did, the spies went in and came back and told us it was too dangerous to enter. And now we know we will die in this wilderness, and we don't yet know what it's all for. I imagine Korach saying, I have no power, I have no control. I also have nowhere to go. I am terrified. But that isn't what he said. Instead, he essentially said to Moses, who do you think you are? You think you're better than us? You think you're better than me? Not only that, Korach also spread those thoughts around the Israelite camp, making others question why they trusted Moses in the first place, forgetting that it was God who they were trusting. The rebellion ensued, ending in loss of life. Korach was swallowed whole, not only by the earth, but also by his unnamed anxiety and fear. Instead of acknowledging what he was feeling, he attempted to take control. The only solutions he could think of to change the way he felt was to multiply toxicity within the camp as a way to build himself up and to lash out at Moses and Aaron, when perhaps he wished he could lash out at God instead. All of these steps he took were the result of an anxious mind looking for relief. He was not thinking clearly. He was the worst version of himself because his actions were rooted in fear. We have been carrying so much for so long. We have been living in fear for so long. In many ways, life feels back to normal. After all, many of you who are again watching from home tonight were here in our sanctuary just 1 week ago. Some of you may be out of town, seeing family members for the first time in over a year. Maybe you're eating at restaurants or inside someone else's home, anywhere but your own home. You might be shopping in stores or boarding airplanes for vacation of all things. You're embracing the life you put on pause in March of 2020. In so many ways, this feels like freedom, and yet that doesn't erase the trauma of the time that came before. We have survived a traumatic time in the history of the world. Even as we embrace new possibilities and opportunities, we still carry the scars. Not only that, but we still live with great uncertainty. If COVID taught us anything, it's that everything can change at any moment, and we truly have no control. But our tradition always teaches us we cannot hold our fear in. Like Korach, it will eat you alive. Carrying grief and uncertainty alone causes us to damage relationships and self-sabotage. Living transparently, acknowledging our pain with a friend we trust, gives us the strength to live in the tension that life brings with it. We cannot be our best selves while holding it all in. After Korach's failed sacrificial offering, God commands Moses to take Korach's fire pan, hammer it into sheets, and use it to plate the altar. The reason given for this instruction is so that the sight of them may serve as a reminder to the people of Israel, to remind them that there are consequences to holding everything in. There are consequences to not acknowledging our discomfort, our fear, our anxiety. And this declaration by God to save the fire pans, not only save them, but turn them into something sacred as a reminder, also made me wonder about why we call this Torah portion Parshat Korach. While each Torah portion receives its name from the first unique word found within it, decisions also had to be made as to where the breaks between portions landed. With the exception of Noach and Sarah, no Torah portions are named after a well-known biblical figure. There's no Parshat Avraham, no Parshat Rivka, no Parshat Miriam or Parshat Moshe. Often they aren't named after an individual at all, but rather begin with a verb. In fact, this portion begins, Vayikach Korach. Why not name it Vayikach? And he took. Why name it Korach? I would argue that it is so when we hear the name Korach year after year, we can't ignore it. It's the name of the Torah portion. It serves as a reminder to us all, Avadnu, Kulanu Avadnu. We are lost, all of us. We are lost. By saying that, we can avoid the fate of Korach. We will not be swallowed or consumed by our fear. We will live with it. We will walk with it. We will hold it. But we share in the burden together, strengthening one another. We may be lost from time to time, but you are never alone. Shabbat Shalom.